Good morning everybody, my name's Chris, this is Let's Walk. We're out this morning taking a bit of a walk around my golf course, not playing today. Just thought I'd do some recording down here before everybody hits off. It's about 6:30 in the morning. The sun's out, it's a beautiful day. So rather than you watching me today, you're going to have a look at the golf course as I walk up and down a couple of holes. This morning I wanted to talk about customer service and how I believe customer service has been replaced with shareholder returns and dividends. Growing up in the workforce, everything was about customer service. The customer was always right. You always looked after the customer. A happy customer was a return customer. All of those sorts of things were the mantra that led retail and service industries alike through the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. I think greed for profits and shareholder returns has really taken hold in Australia. And when the priority used to be making sure that the customer was looked after, the priority is now making sure that the shareholder gets a return first and foremost. I spent a lot of years working with a big box retailer that prides itself to this day on great customer service. But I know, working in that company, that our mantra was return on capital first and everything else second. We had to return a percentage of our capital back to the mother company in order to remain viable. And that mother company then returned a dividend to its shareholders, which was its most important activity, to create shareholder dividends. So you look at the Australian stock market and you look at the top 20 or 30 companies, and it's made up of what we use every day. You've got retailers, Woolworths, Coles, Metcash, Wesfarmers, all big retailers, or parts of their business are big retailers, and all of them are putting, in my opinion, profit and shareholder dividends and returns ahead of their customers. Banks, the same. Our top 4 or 5 banks in Australia are all publicly listed. Commonwealth Bank's shares are crazy expensive. People buy those for probably not as much capital growth as they used to get, but certainly for a regular income through dividends and returns. The mining companies are all publicly listed. There was a lot of hoo-ha many years ago. Kevin Rudd, in my opinion, didn't do a lot of things right, but he did try to bring in a mining tax, and pretty much I think he lost his role as Prime Minister because he tried to bring in that mining tax. I think the big mining companies have a lot of say in Australia, and they've gone, not on our watch, you're out. We might be sitting in a different country with a different landscape if that mining tax had come in. A lot of service industries are also publicly owned. When I was growing up, Telstra was owned by the government and Qantas was owned by the government, and they got sold off, and they're now obviously both darlings of the stock market. And you only had to see through COVID that Qantas' most important activity was returning shareholder dividends. It certainly wasn't customer service. They couldn't have done more to destroy their reputation, which had been so good for so long through the COVID period, because they were worried about their share price or their dividends tanking, that they put the business ahead of customers. And it was a tricky time for airlines. I understand that. There wasn't a lot of customers that you could fly around. But upon their return, when things were better, rather than celebrating with their customers that they were back in the air, they stuck it to their customers and put their returns and profits ahead of their loyal customers. And they've lost a lot of loyal customers, that's for sure. Healthcare, that really bugs me. Healthcare being all publicly listed. They should be looking after their customers far better than they do. But again, they're there to create profit, wealth, and shareholder returns, and same with the energy sector. The energy sector growing up was owned by the government. I understand that the reasons for those being sold off, but what it has done is created another group of companies that are publicly owned, where their first priority is to return shareholder returns, and I can go on and on. Trains, a lot of our services, a lot of what we do. So, just recently, Donald Trump brought in tariffs in the US. That's interesting. I wonder if you could bring in national tariffs on some of these big companies, like the mining tax, just to try and draw some of these profits down back into public hands. Or, if you're not going to do that, make that a penalty if the customer service isn't at a high standard. The ACCC have talked about cracking down on supermarkets for price gouging. Well, they price gouge, believe me. There's no if, buts or maybes. They are price gouging. They're making profit at everybody else's expense because, again, their most important number is that share price. Oh, it's not the share price, it's the dividend that they're returning. So, you look at companies' visions, and a lot of them will include terms like social responsibility, accountability, ethical decision making, but these are catchphrases these days. I don't think they actually mean anything, and It's a pity that Australia's most wealthy companies aren't socially responsible. They all have programs where they do give back to the community. I know the company that I worked for is very active in the grassroots community, which was fantastic to see. I wouldn't say it's an afterthought, but it's certainly not what they make profits for. At the end of the day, they make profits for their shareholders, not even for reinvestment or to give back into the community. So I would like to see some sort of reform in Australia where some of these companies do have a bit more social responsibility and there are some reforms around what happens to these profits. You talk about cost of living, a lot of these companies are making more money now than they were pre-COVID in particular. And even just post-COVID, a lot of these companies have used the opportunity of things going up. You know, shipping went through the roof. Well, shipping has come down so much, I would say 80% to ship a container compared to what it was, you know, a few years ago. And while prices went up, we haven't seen the prices come down accordingly. So there's a couple of ways that you can fight the machine, I guess. The first way is to invest in these companies, and through our super, I'm sure we all have invested in these or similar companies. Yeah, you can also take some money and invest in these local companies and use those dividends to apply to their services or product. You know, if you go and buy some Coles shares, you know, for $10,000 worth of shares, you're getting around $330 of dividends a year, maybe a little bit more. And if you look at all of the big companies in Australia, Woolworths, CBA, a lot of those companies that pay strong dividends, Wesfarmers, you're getting about that sort of return, that 3.2 to 3.3%. So, you know, if you do own shares in Coles and you're getting $330, that gives you a decent shop once a year on them, or you can reinvest in more shares and keep growing that. But then in doing that, you're just becoming a part of the machine, I guess. So the second way is that we all stand up and ask for some sort of reform where the ACCC actually does something about whether or not prices are being gouged, that prices are fair, that profits are fair, and that companies are being monitored so that when something goes on the shelf or a fare gets released, it's not purely about what it's going to drive to the bottom line so that it can be returned in some way to the shareholders, but that it's about looking after us as well. So that's a bit of a rant this morning, but I really just wanted to get over that you can see everything is changing. And great customer service is really, really hard to find in publicly listed companies these days. Greed has taken over. You only have to look at how some salaries are packaged to see that it's in these large companies' leadership to get profit first and customer service, customer relations, everything else second, because it's to their own benefit. And if you get a leadership team that is driven by profit rather than service, then there's going to be a problem. So that's my little walk for this morning. Greed over customer service. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for joining me out at my golf course. We'll walk again.